So in today's class, we learned about African Americans and their culture. We raised the question of whose life is it anyway? Next class, we're going to continue.
تكذب يا وليد ما بتعرف انه حرام وعيب ومش من الاداب والكذاب ما رح يبقى له اصحاب ما
Wake your ass up, sleepyhead. You missed an important class, so you gotta pay your attention to the video to get ready for the final exam.
Howdy there. Yes, I am you. The digital you, and I came to explain the lesson you missed while sleeping. So watch carefully. First of all, open your literature book at page 370. Marriage is a Private Affair is a story by Chinua Achebe.
Bruh, look at this dude. Wait till you see the... No.
The story takes place in the West African country of Nigeria. The conflict is between a father and his son. They belong to the Igbo, one of Nigeria's largest ethnic groups. The father lives in an Igbo village where people follow traditional practices. This is Okik. He is Nemeka's father.
Daddy, chill.
And this is his son Nemeka.
The girls are on me. Damn. Everybody pay attention. This right here is my pretty boy swag.
Meanwhile, at 16 Krasanga Street, Lagos.
Have you written to your dad yet?
No. I've been thinking about it. I think it's better to tell him when I get home on leave.
But why? Your leave is such a long way off yet. 6 whole weeks. He should be let into our happiness now.
Nemeka was silent for a while, and then began very slowly as if he groped for his words.
I wish I were sure it would be happiness to him.
Really, nigga?
Of course it must. Why shouldn't it?
You have lived in Lagos all your life, and you know very little about people in remote parts of the country.
That's what you always say. But I don't believe anybody will be so unlike other people that they will be unhappy when their sons are engaged to marry.
Yes. They are most unhappy if the engagement is not arranged by them. In our case it's worse. You are not even an Igbo.
You don't really mean that he will object to your marrying me simply on that account. I had always thought you Igbos were kindly disposed to other people.
So we are. But when it comes to marriage, well, it's not quite so simple. But this is not peculiar to the Igbos. If your father were alive and lived in the heart of Ibibio land, he would be exactly like my father.
I don't know. But anyway, as your father is so fond of you, I'm sure he will forgive you soon enough. Come on then, be a good boy and send him a nice lovely letter.
It would not be wise to break the news to him by writing a letter. It will bring it upon him with a shock. I'm quite sure about that.
Okay.
As Nemeka walked home that evening, he turned over in his mind different ways of overcoming his father's opposition, especially now that he had gone and found a girl for him. He had thought of showing his letter to Neen but decided on second thoughts, not to, at least for the moment. He read it again when he got home and couldn't help smiling to himself. He remembered Dubois quite well, an Amazon of a girl who used to beat up all the boys, himself included, on the way to the stream, a complete dunce at school.
I have found a girl who will suit you admirably. You go in Wiki, the eldest daughter of our neighbor, Jacob Wiki. She has a proper Christian upbringing when she stopped schooling some years ago. Her father, a man of sound judgment, sent her to live in the house of a pastor, where she has received all the training a wife could need. Her Sunday school teacher has told me that she reads her Bible very fluently. I hope we shall begin negotiations when you come home in December.
On the second evening of his return from Lagos, Nemeka sat with his father under a cassia tree. This was the old man's retreat where he went to read his Bible when the parching December sun had set and a fresh, reviving wind blew on the leaves.
Yaba, I have come to ask for forgiveness.
Forgiveness for what, my son?
It's about the marriage question.
Which marriage question?
I can't. I mean, it is impossible for me to marry Nweek's daughter.
NANI? お前はもう死んでいる。
Why you bully me?
Impossible? Why?
I don't love her.
Nobody said you did. Why shouldn't you?
Marriage today is different.
Oh shit! Oh shit! Oh shit! I'm going to put your hands like that, please. I want to hold you down. All right, you know that. You know that. You know that.
Look here, my son. Nothing is different. What one looks for in a wife are a good character and a Christian background.
Moreover, I am engaged to marry another girl who has all of you guys' good qualities, and who?
What did you say?
She is a good Christian, and a teacher in a girls' school in Lagos.
Teacher, did you say? If you consider that a qualification for a good wife, I should like to point out to you, Emeka, that no Christian woman should teach. St. Paul in his letter to the Corinthians say that women should keep silence.
Yosh, 俺様が相手だ。俺はこいつらとは違うぜ。どうした？やってみせろ。何？
Did you say Nanitaga? What does that mean?
Nina Tang from Kalbar. She is the only girl I can marry.
This was a very rash reply, and Nemeka expected the storm to burst, but it did not. His father merely walked away into his room. His father's silence was infinitely more menacing than a flood of threatening speech. That night the old man didn't eat.
Stop it. Get some help.
When he sent for Nemeka a day later, he applied all possible ways of dissuasion. But the young man's heart was hardened, and his father eventually gave him up as lost.
I owe it to you, my son, as a duty to show you what is right and what is wrong. Whoever put this idea into your head might as well have cut your throat. It is Satan's work.
You will change your mind, father, when you know Neen.
やったぜ。ケンシロウの飛行をついた。
From that night the father scarcely spoke to his son. He did not, however, cease hoping that he would realize how serious was the danger he was heading for. Day and night he put him in his prayers. Nemeka, for his own part, was very deeply affected by his father's grief. But he kept hoping it would pass away. If it had occurred to him that never in the history of his people had a man married a woman who spoke a different tongue, he might have been less optimistic. It has never been heard was the verdict of an old man speaking a few weeks later. In that short sentence he spoke for all his people. This man had come with others to commiserate with Okik when news went around about his son's behavior. By that time the son had gone back to Lagos.
It has never been heard.
What did our Lord say?
Sons shall rise against their fathers. It is there in the holy book.
It is the beginning of the end.
Have you thought of consulting a native doctor about your son?
He isn't sick.
What is it then? The boy's mind is diseased, and only a good herbalist can bring him back to his right senses. The medicine he requires is a mallow, the same that women apply with success to recapture their husband's straying affection.
Madobagwu was right, this thing calls for a medicine.
I shall not call in a native doctor. I will not be another Mrs. Atuba. If my son wants to kill himself, let him do it with his own hands. It is not for me to help him.
But it was her fault. She ought to have gone to a non-herbalist. She was a clever woman, nevertheless.
She was a wicked murderess. The medicine was prepared for her husband. It was his name they called in its preparation, and I am sure it would have been perfectly beneficial to him. It was wicked to put it into the herbalist's food and say you were only trying it out.
Oh my God! Wow!
6 months later.
6 months passed and Nemeka is now showing his young wife a short letter from his father.
يا بالستين كندرة والله لألعن أبوك على ساعة اللي شفتك فيها.
It amazes me that you could be so unfeeling as to send me your wedding picture. I would have sent it back. But on further thought I decided just to cut off your wife and send it back to you because I have nothing to do with her. How I wish I had nothing to do with you.
Then Neen started crying when she read the letter and saw the mutilated picture. Don't cry, my darling. He is essentially good-natured and will one day look more kindly on our marriage.
2,000 years later.
8 years passed and that one day didn't come. For 8 years, Okik would have nothing to do with his son, Nemeka. 8 years passed and that one day didn't come. And now I'm going to show you what happened through those 8 years in a summary.
واحد ابو العبد قطع ابو العبد ابوي امي ملجا مشتاوي ابو سبع بستاوي ابو رامي حسنان شوارب ابو طافش طه النداء الاردن سيدنا سيدنا سيدنا
Nemeka and his wife were a happy couple, and the women in village meetings treated Neen good. They weren't hostile to her, and paid her an excessive deference. And Neen also made friends among them. Then one day Neen wrote Okik a letter that made him read more carefully and changed his face expressions.
Our 2 sons, from the day they learnt that they have a grandfather, have insisted on being taken to him. I find it impossible to tell them that you will not see them. I implore you to allow Nemeka to bring them home for a short time during his leave, next month. I shall remain in Lagos.
The old man at once felt the resolution he had built up over so many years falling in. He leaned against his window and looked out. Then it started to rain very hard and the rain was accompanied by thunder. He was trying so hard not to think of his 2 grandsons. But he was losing the battle. His mind immediately returned to the children. How could he shut his door against them? By a curious mental process he imagined them standing, sad and forsaken, under the harsh angry weather, shut out from his house.
ميس تأسينيم أعطيني واحد بوناس عالفان البليز.
لا.
بليز.
لا.
بليز.
لا.
بليز.
لا.
بليز.
2,000 years later.
لا.
عمر. نعم زين. شغل لأي ليل أي كي اللي بيعك بارود خانك.